Tonight on the Barbara Walters Special.
Oliver North was my boss. He was a man I admired. And it's very tragic that this is happening. I think it's tragic for the whole country that this is happening now.
But here in Washington, it was hardly time for relaxation. The White House set the scene for the Iran-Contra story, a tale of mystery and intrigue that has dominated the headlines these past summer months. Out of it all emerged a young woman as beautiful and provocative as any we have ever interviewed. Her name, Fawn Hall, the loyal secretary to this summer's main player, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. Tonight, Fawn Hall speaks out in the very first interview of her life. Stay with us.
The Barbara Walters Special, brought to you by the new Merkur Scorpio. German performance you can be comfortable with. Scorpio, imported from Germany. Only at a Lincoln Mercury Merkur dealer. And L'Oreal, performing preference visual invisible coverage makeup. And new Lash Out extending mascara.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give this committee is the truth and the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
You may be seated.
She was the 18th witness to testify at the congressional hearings on the Iran-Contra scandal. In the midst of billionaire arms dealers and secret missions came a very tall, very beautiful, and very loyal secretary. Her name was Fawn Hall, and her appearance tripled television ratings.
As a secretary, it was my job to facilitate the smooth operation of the office. I was a dedicated and a loyal secretary and performed my duties in an exemplary manner. I can type.
But her testimony, which was given with immunity, showed that Fawn Hall did more than type. As the trusted assistant to Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, she had also helped her boss shred and alter compromising documents. And on November 25th, the day that Oliver North was fired, she smuggled out documents as investigators began to search the office for evidence.
And I believe at that time I probably took the altered copies of the altered documents, folded them, and placed them inside my boots.
Throughout the testimony, Fawn Hall showed confidence, poise, and the appropriate innocence. She captured the public's eye and became an all-American celebrity.
One of my friends said, Andy Warhol once said that everyone's famous for 15 minutes. I kind of feel like that right now.
But along with her moment in the public eye, she discovered the pitfalls of being there. She had modeled part-time while working as a secretary, and now every photograph ever taken of her became front-page material. Her good looks brought innuendos that her relationship with Colonel North had been more than professional.
And you know that I've got a beautiful secretary, and the good Lord gave her the gift of beauty, and that people snicker that Ollie North might have been doing a little hanky-panky with his secretary. Ollie North has been loyal to his wife since the day he married her.
Her 18-month relationship with Arturo Cruz Jr., son of a top Nicaraguan Contra leader, became news even though they no longer dated. And the tragic suicide of her stepbrother became a headline. But this 27-year-old secretary was certainly not used to being in the spotlight. She was more like the typical girl next door. As a child, she loved to draw and was an average student. Her divorced mother married a widower with 2 daughters and a son. Both parents cross-adopted, and the brother and sisters became a family. Fawn is very close to her parents, Ronald and Wilma Hall, their relationship being one of respect and much humor. Her stepfather is a former military officer who is now a photographer with the Department of Defense. And her mother, still a government secretary, has worked at the National Security Council for Henry Kissinger and Robert McFarlane. Fawn joined the family tradition of governmental work when she graduated from high school and became a Navy secretary. In 1983, Fawn Hall was hired as secretary for Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, and she became devoted to her boss and his ideals almost immediately.
I strongly believed then, as I do now, that the efforts made to support the Contras, obtain the release of American citizens being held hostage, and respond to moderates in a country as strategically as important as Iran were carried out with only the best of intentions and the interests of this country, the United States.
And it was that devotion that was the basis for her action this past November.
Sometimes you have to go above the written law, I believe.
Fawn Hall later retracted that statement, but perhaps those words were the most revealing of all as to the activities of Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North and his team. Since her testimony in June, Fawn has received thousands of letters. An overwhelming majority of them are in support of her actions, and she plans to answer each and every one. Fawn has been reassigned to the Pentagon, where she works 9 to 5 as a secretary. The White House and its players continue to dominate the life of Fawn Hall, even though she recently signed with the William Morris Talent Agency in the hopes of pursuing a brand new career. When Miss Hall first agreed to talk with us, there were no restrictions in our discussion. But the night before the interview, one of her new lawyers suddenly informed her and us that there were certain areas she couldn't discuss. Miss Hall was granted what is called use immunity. In her lawyer's opinion, this means that she can't be prosecuted for anything she said in her testimony before Congress or the independent counsel. She doesn't have that same protection for this interview. Therefore, the questions we were not allowed to ask were those dealing with the testimonies given at the hearings, which could possibly harm Fawn Hall or future defendants. Nevertheless, Fawn Hall had plenty on her mind and wanted to say it. This interview was conducted 2 weeks ago at her parents' colonial home outside of Washington, in a quiet Virginia suburb where she still lives. Had what seemed to be a nice, normal life. Suddenly, lights, questions, autographs, everything. What has this done to your life?
It's changed my life around me. It's changed a lot for my parents, my friends. For someone who I think I pictured myself as somewhat shy, it meant a lot coming out of my shell. I've had, to go before Congress and to speak before people, not just a group of people, but elected officials, under such a trying time and such an emotional time, was probably the best way for someone to come out of their shell.
I wonder if there will ever be anything in your life as exciting as those days in the NSC.
I found that I enjoyed being a secretary. I really liked it. And especially when I transferred from the Department of the Navy to work in a position as an executive secretary, I found that it was even more fulfilling. The day he was fired, I was in tears, and I'll never forget it. I thought it was unfair. You see a person work so hard for what is right, for what he believes is right for this country. And a lot of that is transferred into people that work for him. That I was extremely upset. It crushed me. And a lot of people said, Fawn, just remember, now that this is over, that it will never be as exciting as it was. And don't be disappointed. You've got to kind of decompress.
Fawn, are you allowed now to handle classified material?
I'm in a position now where I don't handle it. I'm working in the office for two guys, a Navy guy and a Marine guy, a Marine officer, that the subject we're working, there is no classified.
I know this is touchy, but would you be allowed to handle classified material now?
I don't know. The circumstance hasn't arose.
What is this transition time like for you now? Still working for the government, thinking of a new career?
Since February 25th, I've gotten numerous offers from things I would never consider to things that I was honored to have someone interested in pursuing for me. The reason I decided to sign with William Morris is if I don't try this, that 5 years down the road, I might regret not having explored it. I haven't decided to do anything. I am still a secretary at the Department of the Navy. This is not history, the Iran-Contra affair. And I care very deeply for the people that are involved in this. And this was a difficult decision for me to sign with them. A very difficult decision. Because my heart is split because, there is a pending investigation going on about people I care very deeply about issues that I care very deeply about. So it was an extremely difficult decision, and one reason I decided to come here today to talk to you is because I want people to know that, as some of the headlines read, Fawn Hall signs with talent agency, Fawn Hall goes to Hollywood, Fawn Hall sees the glitter of the silver screen. That's not me.
You're very concerned about being exploited. The big picture, the big story, and then it's all over.
Yes.
We hear rumors that you might want to do a talk show, that you might want to be a reporter. Does that sound more like it?
Well, certainly journalism would be a way to learn a lot about the world and a lot about the people that are in the world. And, I mean, I would be honored one day to, after the right training and the experience.
You want to be sitting where I'm sitting one day, Fawn?
One day I was just about to say that I wouldn't mind sitting down and saying, Barbara Walters, who is Barbara Walters?
Some of your offers were very exploitive. I understand, for example, in some of your offers, Penthouse magazine offered you $500,000 to pose in the nude. Is that true?
Supposedly. I mean, it never crossed my mind. That's not me. I'm not saying it just wasn't me. I never even considered that. I mean, it didn't take any thought.
Fawn, let's go back a little bit in time. When you first went to work for Oliver North, what did you hear about him?
That he did have a great sense of humor, and he was very personable and very easygoing, but he did work hard. I mean, some of the first days I worked for him, I worked till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Fawn, you know all the rumors, and Colonel North addressed himself to them when he talked about the rumors of hanky-panky. Tell us what your relationship was with him.
It was a very professional relationship. He was my boss, and I respected him. I think that question comes up because I'm a woman, and I don't think that I deserve it. I don't think he deserves it. And I don't think his wife, Betsy, deserves it.
Does it make you mad?
It does.
Upset you?
Yeah. I don't think it's fair.
It's also because you're beautiful.
Wow.
You know, I mean, there's the feeling, how can a good-looking man and a beautiful woman work together day by day and not have some relationship?
Well, it might be hard for some people to believe, but it's not hard for me because I did it for 4 years.
You had a brother you loved who died. There are some people who have said that Oliver North was like the brother you lost, that you felt that close to him, that kind of relationship with him. Is there any of that?
I don't know that that's quite the right analogy. When my brother died, it was very tragic. It brought our family a lot closer together. It's something that still upsets me, that's not quite fair. But Oliver North was my boss. He was a man I admired.
Do you think there are times when loyalty can go too far, when dedication can go too far?
That's a point for every individual to make.
What would you say if it were a young woman, another secretary, who said, I'm terribly loyal to my boss, and it might even mean that I have to do things that make me feel funny or uneasy? What would you say?
A lot of secretaries, I read an op-ed piece once.
Yeah.
That said, someone said that I left my brains out in the parking lot when I did certain things. Mm-hmm. I resented that because it wasn't 2 days working for Colonel North and going into some... I worked for the man for 4 years. I knew what he was about. I knew what he believed in. And I don't think to this day that anything... I think that everything was done for a good reason. And I don't know that any of it was against the law.
Even what you did? Now you have immunity, even the fact that you smuggled out papers, even the fact that you altered documents?
I can't talk about that. That's under investigation.
Okay.
Anything I say now is outside of the immunity that I've been granted.
Fawn, in your opinion, do you feel sometimes that the ends do justify the means?
Depends on what... I mean, there's still some circumstances, of course there is.
When I drove up here to see you, your girlfriend has a bumper sticker that says, Oliver North for president. Okay? What do you think? Do you think he would make a good president?
I think he'd make an excellent president.
You really do, huh?
Yeah. But, you know, to talk about that, I mean, he's got to go through a lot. I mean, and maybe it might be, he's made so many sacrifices in his life. His family has made sacrifices. I don't know, Betsy's been, the secretary before I came said to me, Betsy North is a saint.
Is she?
She is a saint. I mean, look what she's been through. And she still smiles. And she is his rock.
You don't think Oliver North is a saint, do you?
I think Oliver North is a wonderful person. I think he's a saint. I think he's great. I mean, he's brought back a little bit of what President Reagan gave us. when he was first elected, I mean, you look at the military when President Reagan came in. A lot of the guys, you talk to them, and back in those days, they didn't wear their uniform into a restaurant, into a bar to have a beer. Now, there's a sense of pride when a serviceman puts on his uniform.
You had not talked to Oliver North before giving your testimony at the hearings?
Absolutely not.
Have you talked to Oliver North since giving your testimony?
No.
Not at all?
Not at all.
Have you talked to Mrs. North at all?
No.
So you have no idea what his mood is or what his thinking is, or do you?
Not really, but there are friends that will, call up and say, I just saw him the other day, he's doing fine,
Yeah. Did you ever meet President Reagan?
Yes.
Under what circumstances?
I met him, I think, twice. One was during the last meeting of the National Bipartisan Commission on Central America, and also the day that we went forward to rescue Americans in Grenada. And I was sitting in a chair by the window, and he started to walk across the room. I said, oh my goodness, he's coming over. What am I going to do? So I said, well, the logical thing, Fawn, is to stand up and introduce yourself if he approaches you. And so I did. And I passed him what I had. And I realized then at that point that he actually wasn't coming over to see me, that he was going for the jelly beans.
Let's talk about some of the other people whom you may have met, whom you may have had some contact with. How would you describe the relationship between Oliver North and John Poindexter? Was it employer, employee? Were they close friends? What?
I think they respected each other's positions, and I think that they worked well together. I think the relationship was good. I think it was healthy.
Was there one that you would trust more than the other, one that you would believe more than the other?
No, I think they were both credible, admirable men. They both... I never saw once something I mistrusted or thought suspicious. I never saw that.
Did you ever see anything before, during, since that disappointed you?
I don't think so. I'd have to, think about that. That's kind of a hard question to answer. I've gone through so many emotions to think back on all those. It's very difficult.
Do you ever ask yourself which one seems more credible?
I believe... I haven't watched all the testimony and because I was, working 9 to 5, so I don't know exactly what the differences were. And I think basically if there were differences, sometimes it boils down to an interpretation of events.
Not always. There were some very big differences. Is that anything that you can comment on? I guess what I'm trying to say, if you had to believe that in the credibility of one over the other, would you have an opinion on that?
No, I don't know.
When you heard in the hearings Oliver North say certain things, there were parts of it you watched, did you find yourself saying, right on?
Yes. It was no acting. It came from inside. And he's wonderful because he's an average American, average in the sense that he believes in the basic principles of life.
Okay. Just your average American saint?
Well, he didn't let the power of the White House change him.
Fawn, you do understand, however, why there was this investigation, why there might be an indictment, why there are people who feel that he broke laws. You do understand that, don't you?
I think it comes there. I understand that there are people that feel that way.
Mm.
But I believe that it's down to an interpretation of the law.
Okay. Remember when you sat at that hearing and you said there are some things above the written law, and then you said you retracted it. But when you said it from the heart. Now, I'm not doing this as testimony and redoing the hearings, but tell me what you meant. Tell us what you meant.
I really feel like I can't talk about that because to a certain extent I would very much like to talk about it. I think it was taken out of, I think it was misinterpreted, I think it was blown up. It was blown up so crazily in the newspapers. Who am I for them to give it such justification that Fawn Hall, 27-year-old secretary, said this and this is the way it was? That's not right. That's not fair.
Was there a period, I'm talking now about your emotions, you're a young woman, you're put in a position you've never been in before. Was there a time you were scared?
I'd be a fool not to say. Of course I was scared. But I still believe to this day, as Oliver North did, what he did, he believed in then, and he believes in now, and I feel the same way.
About what you did?
Yes.
You walk into those hearings, lights, photographers, The glare of all of that. What went through your mind?
I was frightened. The first day I was frightened because I had never, ever dealt with elected officials, congressmen and senators, and all the cameras and the lights. I was scared because I didn't know what the setting was. I mean, I'd never been in the room before.
The next witness will be Miss Fawn Hall.
I'd like to begin with my name. My name is Fawn Hall.
I remember giving my opening speech, and I was scared. I was shaking. Were you rehearsed at all? I mean, did someone sit down and say, listen, these are the kinds of questions you're going to be asked, and so on? I mean, did you have a lot of that?
My lawyer, Plato Kacharis, was very good.
How much rehearsal?
Well, I mean, I tend to talk fast. I say blah, 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 and da-da-da. And he said, no, when you get up there, you have to speak slowly, listen for the question, answer the question.
Did he use sample questions?
Well, I think a few, but basically I had gone over it so much with the special prosecutor and with the staff of the Congress that I basically knew, I was pretty much prepared because I had talked about it for 7 months.
When were you angriest during the hearings? Was there a point?
I was angriest when some people tried to make out what we were doing more exciting and more than it was. And at times where they felt that, the question came up about the immunity thing.
You mean Senator Cohn's question about whether or not Colonel North should have immunity?
I think that one can be granted immunity in an effort for a congressional committee to complete its investigation. I don't think anybody's entitled to immunity.
If the idea is to complete the investigation, then why not grant Colonel North immunity?
Well, if he was not engaged in any wrongdoing, Miss Hall, then we wouldn't have to be involved with the question of immunity at all. But that's a matter
we
that
have our
can debate
separate
later.
opinions, sir. I was just saying that what was in my heart and how I felt. And going home and seeing the tapes afterwards, I kind of went, ooh, But that's what I felt.
Fawn, what if Colonel North or Admiral Poindexter are indicted, convicted? How will you feel? What do you say?
I would be crushed. I would be crushed.
You think they should be pardoned if this happens?
Absolutely.
And how are you going to feel when you have to get up there and testify if this should happen?
I will do exactly as I've done. I will tell the truth the way I know it. It's going to be very emotional for me. I just hope that doesn't happen. I just think it would be an injustice.
And if Colonel North is not indicted, if everything turns out all right,
So happy.
would you like to see him run for political office? Would you like to see him run for president?
I think it would be great. I think he's inspiring. He's motivating. He's a leader. I know he would surround himself with the best of people.
Would you be one of them?
I would love to be one of them. I would love to be one of them.
Would you ever consider a political life for yourself after everything you know now?
That's crossed my mind. I thought about that
No?
because a lot of people have said that being someone my age and having been in a circumstance like this and some of what's inside has come out, that I could be an inspiration to some. It's something to think about. I'm 27. There's a big world and a big life out there ahead.
Fawn, what about your day-to-day life? I mean, we know about the long hours. We know about the working. Have you had more dates since this happened? Are people afraid of calling you?
No, I basically, I'm seeing someone now, but I've not really gone out a whole lot.
One man in your life now. Can you tell us anything about him? I hate to do this, but you know people want to know.
Well, I'm just recently started seeing someone who's a major in the Marine Corps, who I've known for a long, long time.
And this Marine may be the right man?
We'll see. I think, yeah.
This poor Marine tomorrow, after this interview airs, is he prepared for this?
Yeah, he's been with me. He's been through this struggle with me, and he's very special to me, very special.
Fawn, what have you learned about yourself all these months?
it's made me a lot wiser. It's made me realize that probably I'm a lot deeper person than I thought I was. And I've learned how much people mean, the people around me.
Looking back, anything you regret, anything you would have done differently?
I'd hoped that November 25th, that maybe I might not have been so emotional.
Would you still have altered the documents? Would you still have smuggled them out?
I really can't comment. I don't think it's appropriate this time to comment on that. You have to look forward, and I'm going to try not to look back too much and tear myself apart for this. I mean, we've got to look forward.
If you had it to do all over again, would you still go to work for Oliver North?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.